Good afternoon, everyone. We're again down here at the Las Vegas Federal Courthouse. We're in a short break and recess just through lunch, and we've just got just a few minutes to give you a quick update. But as of yet this morning, we have had no witnesses absolutely at all for the defense. We've been in motions and arguments all morning. The jurors have been in a back room and haven't been permitted to come in and listen to anything that we've had to say. We know that two of our main witnesses have been denied this morning before we even had one witness on the stand. So we haven't even had a single witness on the stand yet, and they're already wanting to proper witnesses before they get on the stand. They're excluding witnesses, denying them to be on the stand to testify. Margaret Houston has been a big part of this whole case, and she is totally denied to testify, and they've known the whole time that she was going to testify. She has been excluded and is not allowed to testify, and also Corey Houston, a relative of hers that's from out there by Mesquite also, is being denied to testify. We are not allowed to talk about anything about the cows or the dead cows. It has nothing to do with it, anything to do with the arrest of Dave Bundy. Dan Love's being denied for us to bring him in to testify.
Anything outside of the wash?
Anything outside of the wash area today, we're finding out, we're being denied any of this testimony except for the day of the 12th inside the wash area or on the bridge. We're seeing government tyranny at its largest today, more than any time in any of these past trials. And it's totally absurd and totally wrong what they're doing. So again, it's almost 1 o'clock. We have not got a single witness to testify on the stand in front of the jurors. The jurors have not come in. We're hoping the jurors come in here shortly after lunch. I'll let Andrea tell you a few things that she's got on the notes today, and we'll keep filling in some stuff. Go ahead.
Okay, so we went in and they had the 29A motions. A lot of the motions were that there's zero evidence, especially for the conspiracy, that some of these folks had any part of it. 3 of them drove the truck to the protest and back. So there was no discussion of what was going on or going to happen. There was no evidence that they were part of a militia, radio evidence, that they had radio communication between the 2 of them. And then they just went to the wash to watch the cows come home. The assault reads, the jury instructions read, the element says they have to be aware they were being assaulted, and that the agents already had fear prior to them arriving, so that one should have been dropped. And then the extortion. The order was about the cattle roundup. So when they put that out, that the impound and the order was already over, how can they extort something that's already over? The judge goes in to say that the sheriff said Gold Butte will be open, but not that it was open currently. She also said the 924, there was some arguments about the 924Cs and how there's 3 of them and there should only be 1. They argued that they should all be dropped, but if they weren't, that only 1 should be dropped because you can't have multiple 924Cs based on a same action. And she argued that one, you do not need to point a weapon for it to be an assault on an officer. Merely having a weapon that an officer can see is assaulting an officer. And then they quoted U.S. versus Castaneda, there can be multiple charges based on the same evidence. She also said if you have a gun and go into a bank and say, "Give me the money," that statement is not protected by the First Amendment, and the gun is not protected by the Second. The same thing here, where the mob has guns going down to intimidate the officers and yells, "Give us the cows back," and that's the same thing to her. She also said, if you're a conspirator, even if your part is small, you are still responsible for the actions of everyone and the entire actions of the conspiracy. Stating, if you're in a bank robbery, the getaway driver is still charged with the actions of the other individuals inside the bank. This is a general intent crime, and the defense does not need to have intended harm. We go into Dan Love and the motion to compel Dan Love to testify. And she says that there's no need to have Dan Lev come in. Other people have already testified to it. She said she's not going to go into the sheriff if the sheriff has authority to release government property, because that was one of their arguments. She also said non-relevant things like beliefs in if the court order was legal, religious beliefs and political beliefs are not going to be allowed. If the witness needs to talk to if they need lawyers. So any witness we're bringing is going to have to be talked to by the judge first and given a lawyer before they're able to testify.
Unindicted co-conspirators.
Jackson got up and said if the government is threatening the witnesses with charges if they testify, this is grounds for dismissal. That was also denied. And the CJO office needs to be here so that they can call witnesses. And that's all I've got right now.
So we're seeing witness intimidation big here. And we want to make that point very plain out here to everyone. Every single witness that the defendants want to bring at this point has to have an attorney before they can testify. And they're being threatened with prosecution. The government says this is still an ongoing case and they cannot talk about it, who's under investigation and what they're doing. But they are wanting to make sure that every witness is propered, has got an attorney, and the government wants to make them understand that they could be prosecuted yet in this case, and they're being threatened with that. The government also is calling the witnesses lay witnesses. They're not professional witnesses. They says we have lay witnesses running around that don't know anything and that are just seeing stuff wherever they're at the protest or at the wash. They're lay witnesses and they are not qualified to testify in this case. We had all these professional government witnesses, hundreds of them, dozens of them, all FBI, BLM, government officials that have testified in this trial the whole time. And they're considered professional witnesses. Some of them wasn't even there. They just looked at all these Facebook posts, but they're still considered professionals at what they've done. The lay witnesses are not professional, and there need to be propered or possibly an attorney before they can testify. Jury nullification was brought up several times today by the prosecutor and the judge both. And they said that we don't want to risk the jurors with jury nullification. We can't risk the jurors to hear some of this stuff that the defense witnesses may have to say because jury nullification may be brought in. The prosecutors and the judge understand this very clearly, and they keep bringing this up and say it's irrelevant, and they want to make sure that jury nullification is not at all a part of this trial. One of the things we keep being told that we can't have any emotions, outburst, we can't, no expressions, this is told to us every single day in this court. And I'm going to reference the prosecutors today as the Four Stooges. These Four Stooges over there, their body language, they're shaking their head. We're not allowed to do none of this. They're over there trying to give orders to the judge, shaking their head, yes and no at different things that deny or this and that, when the judge is supposed to make these decisions up on her own without them trying to give it to her. All four of these Four Stooges are over there to the side, shaking their head, nonstop, giving all kinds of body language before the judge even gets a chance to make these motions. And they're not reprimanded, they're not told anything. But if we have any body language, we make any smiles or remarks or shake our head, we're reprimanded or even removed from the courtroom. One of the other things the government's saying that these witnesses can't talk about things is that about how the government or the BLM showed force. They said there's no evidence that the BLM showed force, and there's no argument against that we can't bring any argument or witnesses in showing that the government showed force, such as Margaret Houston's testimony. The jurors would be tainted, and that could be signs of jury nullification to give to them, and they don't want her testimony. So that's one reason she's been denied to testify. These are some of the things that I've got for you. We're going to have to rush here just quickly, but Doug Knowles has something to say here about Gary Hunt. We want to bring him in, and we're going to have you a more update. Did you want to do that, Doug?
Sure, that's fine.
Yes.
been speaking to Gary. I spoke to him again this morning. He's in good spirits. He's in Sacramento County Main Jail, waiting to be transported. There's some concern that they might diesel him. The federal defender, I spoke with him today, is insisting that because he's on a civil hold instead of a criminal hold, that won't happen, but he will help us if it does. So Gary wants to thank everybody for their support, and again, he's asking that nobody contact his family or his home. It's kind of a touchy situation there, and doesn't want his family disturbed. If you have an ability to and would like to contribute, there's a page on my website, itmattershowyousstand.com. It's Gary Hunt, Freedom of Speech, and you can donate there if you're interested. Everything that anybody could do would be very much appreciated. Gary is not employed, he's retired and low income. So thanks, guys.
Thanks. So we had the courtroom packed out today. We've had people as far away as from Colombia, South America. We've had people from Arizona, Utah, Illinois, Montana, Idaho, all over. I think there's some people here maybe today even from Washington. So we appreciate all the support of the people that came down here today. I know there's a lot more coming throughout the week. We are going to start having a full courtroom the next 2 weeks. That's awesome. The more the merrier. We appreciate it. We need everybody we can get.
Has anybody filed anything to impeach the judge?
I know there's stuff out there. These attorneys, I don't think have filed anything to impeach a judge. I think they think it's almost hopeless at this point, but I know there's people out here trying. I know that you have something else to say too.
I think one of the big things that they're arguing inside today is that the third-party witnesses cannot state anything about their fear. They're not going to let any testimony to a third-party witness and their fear into the courtroom. They're also saying that there is no defense. You are not allowed to try the defense of I was in self-defense of myself against these officers. That is not going to be allowed. Although it did say they were arguing the defense of protecting other people. It's really convoluted because if you talk about third party, they've brought in Metro police officers and Nevada Highway Patrol, but they're not federal agencies, and so that would be considered a third party. And they're saying, well, because they're law enforcement, they're not considered a third party. So what they're basically saying is, we're allowed to put in all this evidence, we're allowed to bring up third party fears, we're allowed to do all this, you can't bring that up at all. In fact, they're saying none of our witnesses can come in and testify to pretty much anything because they're third party. And so they're basically trying to make it so the only defense we have is for each individual defendant to get up and testify for himself.
And just to clarify, these people that are so considered third party are people that were actually at the wash firsthand.
Yes, these third party people were at the wash for sure. And the ones that they're allowing to come in, again, are being threatened. Witness intimidation, threatened with arrest and then possibly indictment. And they're under investigation, and this is an ongoing investigation. The prosecutor stated again in court on record that this is an ongoing investigation, that there are multiple people that were there that possibly still could be arrested. And these people that testify need to talk to attorneys, they are telling them, before they testify, because their testimony could be held against them. And so far we've had no witnesses. We're hoping to have our first witness here right after lunch. They're probably already starting back up in court. We're running a little bit late, but they've already kicked off some of our first main witnesses. Again, that was Margaret Houston and a close relative, Corey Houston, that have been denied to testify again today. And their testimony was crucial to the defense team, and they're not being allowed. So that's about. What, you guys something to say?
I want to say one thing. By this judge's reasoning, by this court's reasoning, the Patriots in 1776 would have been guilty of conspiracy against King George in the Redcoats. Remember that. By their interpretation, we would not have had 1776 the revolution. It would never have happened. It would all been conspiracy, and everybody would have been hung for conspiracy.
Are you going in court?
The way this court's being ran is nothing but the witches' courts up here for sure. We see the Salem witch hunts here in the United States years ago. We're also seeing this that happened in Nazi Germany. This kind of thing is totally wrong for these people that are being accused of something, these so-called crimes, that not even be able to bring witnesses against for themselves that they can prove their innocence. It's the first day of it, so.
Isn't it true that the prosecution had free reign for over 5 weeks?
7 weeks. We're in week 7. We're day 23 here today of actual court days. So 23 days of actual solid court days, week 7, and they've had free reign to bring in dozens and dozens and dozens of witnesses and hours. Some of them spent 2 or 3 days on the stand, some of these witnesses did.
And now they are shutting down defense, is that correct?
They're shutting down the defense. We've argued all morning up until lunch, and we've not been allowed to bring one witness in so far. We've actually brought in attorneys to talk to these witnesses before they testify, and we haven't even started yet. And already kicking out other witnesses that they're not allowed to testify. Witnesses that were there firsthand are being called third-party witnesses, and they're not allowed to talk about. They're not allowed to talk about any fear. The witnesses don't qualify for fear. The BLM was the only ones allowed to fear for their lives. They're not allowed to talk about any of the abuse that the BLM done or mismanagement of anything or their conduct. They're not allowed to bring in Dan Love, and they're not allowed to talk about any of like Dave Bundy's arrest, Margaret Houston's how she was treated by the BLM, Ammon Bundy, how he was tased. None of this is allowed to be talked about, or the witnesses, we can't bring them in at this time, or how the cows were killed. Nothing about the cows can be brought in. So,
one of the things that they said was they don't want the jury back in deliberation trying to decide if the BLM was right in their actions or not, and that's why they won't allow them to bring any of those facts in. They said that that's not a place for the jury to be deciding. The jury should be deciding if these guys did the crime or not if how the BLM was acting was lawful.
So we need to get this out there, everybody. We need to spread the word. We need to tell how this court here is abusing people's constitutional rights, abusing their rights. This needs to be spread wide and far. We need politicians to get involved. We need this to be shared and told how these courts are abusing everybody's rights.
Are there any news channels here reporting on this?
No legit news channels. There's a couple of Twitter people here today, but no real media that's here that has, like Channel 8's not here again today. The local news, I haven't seen any of them except just local Twitter people.
And do you know if Channel 8 had the last run talking about Greg Burleson?
They did have the last run. Channel 8 did a little briefing up here just before we went into recess about 10 days ago. And they talked about Greg Burleson and the Patriots out here and the supporters in a bad light, but they did not give anything good, or mostly. They were just talking about how he threatened people.
And they forgot to mention the fact that he was an undercover agent for the federal government?
They 100% did not mention that Greg Burleson had worked as an undercover agent at all. The media did not cover that at all.
So do you agree that that was a false narrative?
It definitely was a false narrative. It definitely was. So, if there's not any more questions, we're going to take off back up to court. We'll be back as close to 5 o'clock as we can. We do not know how long the court's going to last, one way or the other today. But we will be back as quick as we can, right around 5 o'clock, to give you another update.
Okay, so, guys,
thank you.
That building right there is where all the tyrannical government officials are working. Have a good one.